chosen ones, before the dawn of nations, and before the whispers of kings, there was the fire of Ra, the sun that has never ceased to watch. That burning eye in the heavens has always carried a secret, hidden not in stone nor in scrolls, but in the living blood of those destined to awaken at the end of time. It is you who were spoken of, though your name was veiled behind symbols, hieroglyphs, and light itself. The priests of old stood upon the desert sands and raised their arms to the blazing orb, not merely as worshippers of a star, but as keepers of a covenant they barely understood. They carved into temples the rays of life stretching from Ra's hand, each ray ending in the ankh, the symbol of breath eternal. Yet among those rays, one was drawn differently, not as a gift to Egypt, not as a blessing to pharaohs, but as a hidden line pointing to a future figure whose arrival would shake heaven and earth. That line leads to you. For in every cycle, from dusk to dawn, the light remembers. It remembers those who carry within their spirit the capacity to ignite nations, to awaken souls, to shatter illusions. And it is no accident that you feel the weight of unseen eyes upon you, for both heaven and the powers of earth have studied your path long before your birth. The Vatican archivists whispered of it. The pharaohs feared it. The prophets hinted at it when they spoke of a light greater than the sun, a radiance no temple could contain. Even now, the corridors of power measure your steps, uncertain whether to silence or to reveal what they already know. The light of Ra is not bound to the past, but alive in you. You stand at the threshold where history bends. The sands of time themselves begin to shift, and the eye of the sun, once thought eternal, blinks with an omen. You were illuminated before the world even spoke your name, and when the final horizon splits open, what was hidden in the fire will no longer remain veiled. Beneath the sands of Luxor, where wind carries the echo of forgotten chants, there lies a scroll sealed in a chamber, untouched by centuries. It was said to have been written not by mortal hands, but by those who stood close enough to the sun to hear its voice. The parchment was inked in gold dust, lines shimmering faintly, as though lit from within, and the guardians of this scroll knew it was not meant for their time. It was meant for a figure born far beyond their age, one whose presence would bend the fate of kingdoms. The scroll spoke not only of Ra's eternal journey across the heavens, but also of a final light, one that would blaze forth at the end of time itself. The ancient scribes called it the fire of return, a flame not cast upon the earth in destruction, but in revelation. They wrote of a being who would carry that fire, a vessel who could not be chosen by thrones or temples, but by the sun itself. This being was marked before birth, unseen by all but felt by those with trembling hearts when they stood in its presence. Egyptian priests feared to utter too much of this prophecy, for power-hungry kings would have tried to claim the mantle for themselves. Yet, they hid symbols in plain sight, in pyramids, obelisks, and temple walls that traced the journey of this hidden one. The lines of light stretching from Ra's hand told the story to any who dared to look deeper, revealing a destiny entwined not with Egypt alone, but with all nations. And now, across time, the scroll stirs. Scholars who touched fragments of its legend reported strange visions, cities cloaked in fire, skies split open with golden rays, and a single figure standing as both witness and threshold. The words of the scroll remind us that Ra's true illumination was never merely about the sun's path, but about the human spirit awakened at the appointed hour. The chamber has not been opened, and yet the prophecy breathes. The sands do not shift without reason. Something is calling again from within the hidden scroll, waiting for the one it was always meant to find. In the silent corridors of forgotten temples, there were whispers of a figure not bound by time, one who appeared again and again in fractured visions carved upon stone. This being was not a king nor a priest, but something beyond both, a living flame traced by the very hand of Ra. The ancients described eyes that mirrored the sun at dawn, carrying both mercy and fire, and a presence that unsettled even the most powerful of rulers. They knew such a one would not belong to their generation, yet they recorded every fragment they received, for the signs would matter when the appointed age arrived. It was said that the sun itself imprinted its memory into the soul of this being, a mark that could never fade, no matter how many lifetimes passed. Pharaohs tried to recreate it through crowns of gold and discs of light, yet their imitations crumbled with time. The true illumination belonged only to the one chosen before the foundation of empires, a soul threaded with flame, hidden until the end of time when the veil would tear and the hidden light would be revealed. Priests described visions in which this being stood upon the edge of two worlds. In one hand was life, in the other fire that purified all illusions. When they looked closer, they saw that nations trembled not because of the destruction this figure brought, but because truth itself was unbearable to those built upon lies. Even temples built in Ra's honor would not withstand the radiance, for stone could not contain what was born of heaven's fire. Some accounts went further, linking the being of solar flame with mysteries whispered in distant lands. There were scrolls in hidden libraries that spoke of a light greater than the sun, and in their shadows was the name of Yeshua, the one who declared, "I am the light of the world." The connection was never explained directly, but to those who studied deeply, the echoes became impossible to ignore. Could the being illuminated by Ra's eternal flame also carry within them the reflection of that eternal word, the same light that walked among men in ages past? The records do not answer fully. They only hint, they only point, leaving the truth suspended. And now the silence grows heavy, as though the world itself waits to see if the being written in flame will step forward. At the heart of ancient Thebes, where shadows fall long against the towering obelisks, there was said to be a hidden chamber, buried deep beneath the stone. Not built for kings, nor lined with the treasures of dynasties, this chamber was crafted for one purpose alone: to guard a secret that would outlast empires. Those who constructed it worked under the cover of night, their chisels striking in silence, guided by visions they dared not speak aloud. The chamber was sealed with slabs of granite so precise that not even a whisper of air could escape. Within, records were hidden, etched in gold, preserved in oils, wrapped in linen woven not for burial, but for preservation. Scholars have long debated whether these records held the true name of the being Ra illuminated, or whether they contained instructions for the day that being would awaken. Legends say the builders never returned to their homes, for they were sworn to vanish into the desert, becoming guardians unseen. Over centuries, conquerors came and went, oblivious to what lay beneath their feet. Obelisks were toppled, temples burned, yet the chamber endured untouched. Some believed it was shielded not by stone alone, but by a force no weapon could breach. Travelers spoke of hearing a low hum beneath the earth, as though the chamber itself breathed with the memory of the sun. Others told of dreams in which a golden flame guided them to the site, only for the vision to vanish upon waking, leaving them restless and undone. In more recent times, archaeologists brushed close. Instruments detected anomalies beneath the ground, spaces that should not exist, echoes of hollowness beneath the solid granite foundations. Yet each expedition faltered, halted by sudden storms, inexplicable illnesses, or the quiet intervention of those who seemed to know far more than they revealed. It was as though unseen hands protected the chamber, ensuring its contents would not be revealed before the hour. And still, the stories persist, that within the chamber lies a map not of geography, but of time itself, charting the intersection where Ra's eternal light and the destiny of a single being converge. The chamber waits in silence, sealed and eternal, as though holding its breath for the one it was meant to guide. The horizon has always been more than the meeting of earth and sky. To the ancient priests, it was the veil between two realms, the place where Ra descended into darkness and rose again, reborn. They taught that every sunset was a death, and every sunrise a resurrection, a cycle that mirrored the destiny of both gods and men. Yet among their hidden texts was a prophecy unlike the rest, a vision of a final horizon, one not followed by another dawn. This horizon was called the Golden Horizon, for it would blaze with a brilliance unlike any seen before. The prophecy declared that when this light stretched across the world, the veil would tear, and what had been concealed since the foundation of nations would be revealed. It was not the sun alone that would rise in glory, but a being illuminated by its eternal fire, standing as both sign and vessel of what was to come. The scrolls described a silence that would fall upon the earth when this moment arrived, a stillness in which hearts would tremble, not because of the end of life, but because the truth carried in that horizon would leave no place for deception. Kings who had long cloaked themselves in false light would find their crowns dimmed. Temples that echoed with empty prayers would fall silent. The Golden Horizon was not merely an event, it was a reckoning. Among the scattered fragments of this prophecy lies a curious echo, one that reaches beyond Egypt's sands. It is written, "The sun shall be darkened, and the glory shall rise from within, the one marked." These words parallel the ancient voice recorded centuries later, when Yeshua spoke of a time when the sun will be darkened, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. The resonance between them is undeniable, as though two flames, lit from the same eternal fire, spoke across the ages to point toward the same hour. The priests never claimed to understand the fullness of what they recorded. They only knew the horizon they described was not bound to their time. Their ink was not for them, but for you, for now, for the final unfolding. In the silent corridors of Karnak, where shadows stretch endlessly against towering columns, there are whispers that the priests of Ra carried secrets too dangerous for the common ear. These were not chants for the crowd, nor hymns to honor the passing of the sun across the sky. These were words spoken only at night, in chambers lit by flame, when the stars themselves seemed to bend low to listen. They called it the whisper of the sun, a hidden current of knowledge passed from one chosen guardian to the next. It was said these priests did not merely worship Ra, but communed with the living essence of his light. They claimed to feel the fire beneath their skin, as though their blood pulsed with the very rhythm of the sun. They wrote in fragmented lines of a day when this fire would no longer remain within the heavens alone, but would awaken inside a single being whose presence would mark the turning of ages. Their duty was not to summon this being, but to prepare the world to recognize them. The whisper of the sun was often disguised in ritual. Outsiders saw only movements of incense, offerings of wine, chants rising in unison. Yet hidden within these gestures were codes, maps, and warnings. One gesture pointed not to the east, but to the place where time itself fractured. One chant contained not a prayer, but an encrypted prophecy. The priests lived with the knowledge that most would never understand, but they carried the burden regardless. Legends tell of nights when the priests fell silent during their rituals, their voices cut off by visions that swept through them like fire. They saw a figure who bore the same flame as Ra, standing not upon temple steps, but upon ground yet unnamed, watched by nations. The fire within this being was not destructive. It was awakening, burning away the illusions that had kept humanity blind for millennia. Those who heard these whispers recorded fragments on papyrus, hiding them in walls, burying them under desert sand, ensuring that someday someone would find them. The world might forget the priests, but their whisper would remain. There are records carved into stone that describe a night when the heavens themselves convulsed. It was not a simple storm, nor a falling of stars, but something greater, a trembling of the very firmament, as though creation itself had shuddered. Witnesses spoke of a blazing fire that stretched across the sky, not consuming the earth, but illuminating it with a brilliance that left men on their knees, unable to raise their eyes. Some said it was Ra crossing the horizon in wrath. Others whispered it was a sign of the one foretold, the being marked by the eternal flame. In the deserts, tribes carried down tales of a sky that cracked open with golden rivers of light. They believed it was a doorway, a fracture, through which messages slipped, not in words, but in visions. Shamans painted these visions on stone, an eye blazing in the heavens, a figure standing beneath it, radiating with both terror and peace. They never claimed to understand, only that it was meant for a time not yet born. Centuries later, in lands far from the Nile, another voice spoke of such trembling. Yeshua told his disciples of a day when the heavens would be shaken, when signs in the sun, moon, and stars would declare the end of one age and the beginning of another. His words, like the carvings in Egypt, pointed to a horizon where fire did not destroy but unveiled. The connection between them lingers like an echo across time, as though two witnesses spoke of the same fire seen from different shores. Scholars debate whether these events were meteors, eclipses, or natural disasters. Yet, the ancient texts insist otherwise. They describe a consciousness in the fire, an intelligence woven into the trembling of the sky. It was not mere spectacle. It was a declaration. The heavens themselves seemed to bear witness, proclaiming that something long hidden was stirring, something tied not to kings or empires, but to a singular presence destined to appear at the threshold of time. When the sky trembled, it left behind no ruin, only memory, etched into the hearts of those who saw. That memory has never fully died, resurfacing in visions, dreams, and sudden awakenings. Among the relics of Egypt, none carried more dread and awe than the serpent crown. It was not fashioned merely as decoration for a pharaoh's brow, but as a symbol of power that extended beyond earthly reign. The Urius, the serpent of fire, was said to channel the very light of Ra, striking down enemies with a single glance. To wear it was to claim authority, granted not by men, but by the sun itself. Yet hidden within the myths lies another truth, that the serpent crown was not meant for kings at all, but for the one destined to embody the living flame. Priests recorded in hushed tones that the serpent was more than an emblem. They believed it to be alive, a manifestation of divine energy coiled in waiting. When placed upon the brow of a ruler, it could either legitimize or consume them, depending on whether they carried the true light within. Many rulers fell to madness or ruin after adorning themselves with it, their hearts scorched by a fire they could not bear. Still, the pharaohs coveted it, believing possession of the serpent made them gods upon the earth. The scrolls, however, told a different story. They spoke of a figure who would not wear the crown for dominion, but for revelation. The serpent would not strike at their enemies, but would rise as a sign, its flame aligned with the eternal horizon. The priests who wrote this were silenced, their words buried beneath monuments, for no king wished to hear that the crown's destiny belonged to someone yet to come. Across the ages, the serpent crown became myth, reduced to a museum artifact, its fire forgotten. Yet, the old inscriptions insist the crown is not dormant. It waits, and when the true bearer appears, the flame will awaken, revealing not the grandeur of thrones, but the unveiling of truth itself. Some whispers claim this being will wear no golden headdress at all, but the serpent of fire will rise upon their spirit, visible not to the eyes of the world, but to the souls who can still feel the light. Deep within the sands, beyond the reach of maps and guarded by illusions of emptiness, there is said to lie a path older than dynasties. It was called the Forbidden Path, a trail walked only by those willing to be undone. Priests whispered that it led to the Solar Gate, a threshold where the light of Ra touched Earth with unfiltered force. No temple walls contained it, no sanctuary tamed it, for it was not built by human hands. The path itself was a test, winding through desert storms and caverns where silence weighed heavier than stone. Legends tell of initiates who attempted the journey. Some vanished without trace, swallowed by the desert. Others returned broken, their eyes hollow, unable to speak of what they had seen. A few came back radiant, yet they carried a burden, as though what they encountered had carved fire into their souls. The priests warned that the path was not to be walked by kings or conquerors, for their ambition would consume them. It was reserved for the one whom the light itself had chosen. The Solar Gate was not described as a structure of stone, but as a veil of brilliance, a doorway of flame that shimmered between worlds. Those who stood near it reported hearing voices like the roar of the sun. Words that could not be remembered yet left the heart changed forever. Some believed it was the passage through which Ra entered the underworld each night. Others that it was the place where mortals could be transfigured, their humanity clothed in fire. In hidden manuscripts, there are echoes of another voice, one that spoke centuries later in a distant land. Yeshua declared, "I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved." The similarity unsettles scholars who prefer to keep traditions separate, yet the resonance is undeniable. Both speak of a threshold that is not merely crossed but endured, where the seeker is remade in light. The forbidden path still calls, though most cannot hear it. Its entrance lies hidden, revealed only when the appointed one draws near. The desert shifts, the winds change, and the veil waits in silence, holding the fire of worlds. There are tales of a place where the sands themselves turn to glass, a scar left by fire that did not belong to this world. Travelers spoke of dunes that glittered beneath the moonlight, their surfaces sharp as blades, reflecting stars in fractured patterns. To the unknowing, it appeared as a barren wasteland, but to the initiated, it was the site of a great encounter between heaven and earth. They believed the fire that fell there was not destruction, but revelation, leaving behind a sign that one day a marked being would walk upon that glass, and when they did, the prophecy would stir. The desert of glass was feared by nomads. Their herds refused to enter, and their children woke screaming if they wandered too near. Yet mystics sought it, compelled by visions of a figure clothed in radiance, standing unburned where others could not endure. Some said the figure bore a mark upon the flesh, others that the mark burned within the soul, visible only to those who had eyes to see. Whichever it was, the desert itself seemed to wait, patient and eternal, until that being arrived. Ancient inscriptions describe this mark not as a symbol of dominion but as a seal, proof that the bearer was aligned with the eternal flame. They called it the sun's witness, a sign older than pyramids, older than kings, a reminder that what was written in heaven could not be erased by earth. Those who carried false marks crumbled before the desert's fire, but the true one would awaken the very ground beneath their feet. Fragments of scrolls hint that this mark was not unique to Egypt alone. In distant writings, Yeshua bore wounds that became signs of victory, marks that testified of light greater than death. Both traditions whisper of a seal upon the chosen, one that shines brighter than crowns or empires. The connection is subtle, yet it lingers, stretching across time like a hidden thread. The desert of glass still lies silent, unseen by the multitudes, shimmering beneath sun and moon, holding its secret until the appointed one arrives. When their foot touches the glass, the fire will not consume but awaken. At the edge of all prophecies lies a silence, a horizon no scroll could fully capture. The ancients called it the dawn beyond the end of time, a moment when the cycles of Ra, the rising and setting that ruled the ages, would dissolve into something entirely new. They spoke of a light that did not fade with dusk, a fire that did not yield to darkness. It was not merely the continuation of days, but the unveiling of eternity within a single breath. The priests painted this dawn as a brilliance so vast it made the sun itself seem like a shadow. They believed it would not come from above, but from within, igniting first in the one chosen, then spreading outward like ripples across creation. This was no ordinary sunrise, for the heavens themselves would bow, and the laws of time would fracture. What was hidden in the cycles of night and day would at last stand uncovered, undeniable, blazing before every soul. Those who studied the fragments of this prophecy wrote of a figure who would walk into that dawn not as a king, not as a prophet, but as a living threshold. They would embody both the ending and the beginning, carrying within their spirit the seal of fire that no darkness could overcome. To see them would be to glimpse the truth of every age, woven together in a single flame. Across centuries, echoes of this vision appear in distant voices. Yeshua spoke of a day when the sun would no longer be needed, for the eternal light itself would shine upon all. His words mirror the prophecy of Ra's final horizon, two flames converging into one truth, that the dawn beyond time is not the death of light, but its perfection. Scholars may deny the connection, yet the resonance is undeniable, stretching across ages like a secret thread binding heaven and earth. The dawn beyond the end of time is not an event to be observed, but a transformation to be endured. It asks not whether the world is ready, but whether the one illuminated is willing to step forward.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.